Imagine standing on a freezing ridge somewhere in Europe. The wind is dead, the sky is a flat, heavy gray, and standing right in front of you is a young man, staring out at the horizon. He doesn't carry the physical bulk of a traditional conqueror, but look closely at his expression. There is an intensity here, a burning mentioned by those who knew him, that suggests a mind busy cataloging the world, looking for the hidden gaps in its structure. This map shows the Mediterranean Sea, and right here in the center is Corsica. It's a harsh, rocky island, sitting entirely isolated from the traditional power centers of the continent. This is where he began. On the French mainland, the men who actually command armies possess centuries of elite, aristocratic bloodlines. They are defined by their wealth and their physical presence. Our young outsider possesses exactly none of these inherited advantages, but the mainland is currently tearing itself apart. The French Revolution has dismantled the old royal hierarchies, leaving massive voids where established leadership used to be. The entire political structure is fractured. This total national collapse created a rare opening. For a brilliant, unknown kid with nothing to lose, the chaos of the revolution acted as a gateway into a world that previously would have been closed to him. Napoleon left his island and entered the elite military academies of France. The aristocratic cadets mocked his strange accent and his lack of a pedigree, treating him as a permanent intruder. But he weaponized that isolation. Because he held no loyalty to the old aristocratic ways of fighting, he was free to invent entirely modern military frameworks that the establishment could not even imagine. This vintage map of France reveals the scale of the puzzle he faced. It shows a massive web of distinct provinces and messy geographic divisions. The traditional leadership was often paralyzed by these internal borders. Their slow response times left the territory exposed. Napoleon spent his nights studying terrain, ballistics, and supply lines. To him, the European continent was a spatial problem. Its borders were variables in a mathematical equation he intended to solve through pure intellectual work. Since the crown would never be handed to him through inheritance, he engineered an intellectual system designed to physically take it. He soon proved his theories on the field. By concentrating his artillery into coordinated batteries instead of spreading them thin, he shattered enemy lines that heavily outnumbered him. His tactical results began to outspeak his lack of physical stature. The old standards of leadership began to dissolve. On the battlefield, the only metric that mattered was the sheer efficiency of his results, the territory he seized and the armies he dismantled. This visualization tracks his military success. Notice how quickly his control pushes out from Paris. The French forces swallowed neighboring territories at a speed that disrupted the entire European balance of power. The traditional monarchies of Austria, Prussia, and Russia tried to fight back using the same rigid tactics they had relied on for decades. They were consistently outmaneuvered by an army that moved faster and struck with more precision. The sheer velocity of his advance destroyed a long-held illusion. It proved that royal blood and ancient fortresses offered no protection against a mathematically superior strategy. The kid who arrived at the academy as a mocked outsider eventually marched into Notre Dame and placed the imperial crown on his own head. He had completely replaced the mainland elite. Look at this scale comparison. On one side is the peak of his empire, stretching from the Atlantic to the borders of Russia. On the other side is Corsica, the tiny speck in the ocean where he began. A single mind had dismantled centuries of established European architecture. He redrew the borders of the continent and forced every major power to adapt to his new legal and military codes. Think back to that young man standing on the freezing hill. The vast horizon he was looking out at is the world he ended up fundamentally restructuring. Napoleon's trajectory showed that the old European hierarchies were far more fragile than they appeared. When the vacuum of a revolution meets the focus of a relentless outsider, the geography of power can be rewritten in a single generation.